Echoes Hugh. Audio Productions. Smooth, sweet sounds. Echoes Hugh Audio Productions proudly presents a J.S. Mensah audio work.
Welcome to the Sporting Field of Play podcast show. This is the History Edition with me, George Soper. Before we get started, a quick reminder to subscribe to Echoes Hugh Audio Productions by following us on social media for more updates and exclusive content. And if you enjoy this show, then please give us a like and write us a review. Hello sports fans and podcast show fans. Welcome to another episode of our pod where we delve into the rich history of the world's various sports and analyse some of the greatest players and participants. Picture this, the late 19th century, Victorian England, a time of industrial expansion, social change and the birth of what would become the world's most popular sport, football. Amidst the factories and smoky streets of London, a group of young men full of ambition and passion for the game would come together to form a club that would go on to become a giant in English football. So who were these young men? What sparked the formation of Tottenham Hotspur? And how did this small team from North London grow into the powerhouse we know today? Let's find out. The story begins in 1882 in the bustling district of Tottenham in North London. At the time, football was still in its infancy, and like many clubs that would spring up during this period, Tottenham Hotspur was born out of a sense of community and a love for the game. The club was initially formed by a group of schoolboys from the local Tottenham Grammar School and the Hotspur Cricket Club. Football was a popular winter pastime for cricketers as it kept them active during the off-season. The boys, led by Bobby Buckle, were eager to play the game they loved and decided to create their own football team. They called it Hotspur FC, a name inspired by Sir Henry Percy, also known as Harry Hotspur, a medieval English nobleman who lived during the 14th century and was immortalised by Shakespeare. The Percy family owned land in the Tottenham area, and their historical influence loomed large in the local community, making Hotspur a fitting name for the new club. Initially, the club was strictly amateur, and the young founders could scarcely have imagined the heights their team would one day reach. In those early days, matches were played on rough, uneven fields and players wore basic kits, often cobbled together from what they could afford. But the passion was undeniable, and the club began to grow in popularity. In 1884, just 2 years after its founding, the club decided to add Tottenham to its name to avoid confusion with another London club called Hotspur FC. Thus, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club was officially born. Tottenham's early years were characterised by gradual development and increasing ambition. By the late 1880s, the club was playing more organised matches, and they quickly established a reputation as a competitive side. Their first taste of success came in 1890 when they won their first trophy, the Middlesex Senior Cup. This victory was a sign of things to come and marked Tottenham out as a team with serious potential. The club's fortunes took a significant turn in 1895 when they turned professional. This was a bold move at the time, as professional football was still in its early stages in England. But the decision paid off. Turning professional allowed Tottenham to attract better players, improve their facilities and compete at a higher level. The club's ambitions grew and they moved to a new ground, Northumberland Park, which provided better facilities and attracted larger crowds. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Financial difficulties and challenges on the pitch tested the club's resilience. But Tottenham supporters, known for their passionate backing, stood by the team, helping to drive it forward. In 1898, the club made another crucial move, one that would shape its identity for decades to come. They joined the Southern League, one of the key regional leagues at the time. Competing in this league gave Tottenham the exposure and experience they needed to grow as a club. But it was in 1901 that Tottenham Hotspur truly made their mark on English football. This was the year they achieved one of their most famous victories, winning the FA Cup. Not only did they win, they became the first non-league club to do so since the formation of the Football League in 1888. Tottenham's 3-1 victory over Sheffield United in the replayed final sent shockwaves through the football world and cemented their place in history. At this point, Tottenham Hotspur were in their famous White Hart Lane ground and thriving in their new stadium. They were promoted to the Football League's second division in 1908 and quickly established themselves as a force to be reckoned with. As we know, Tottenham's journey was just beginning. The club would go on to win multiple trophies, produce legendary players and become a mainstay in English football. But it all started with those young schoolboys in 1882 who had a dream and the determination to see it through. Bill Nicholson's name is synonymous with Tottenham Hotspur. He's a legend not just at Spurs, but in the annals of English football. His tenure as manager from 1958 to 1974 is remembered as the most successful in the club's history. But what exactly made Nicholson such a transformative figure? How did he lead Tottenham to their greatest achievements, and what legacy did he leave behind? In the next 10 minutes or so, we'll explore the remarkable story of Bill Nicholson's years at Tottenham Hotspur. To understand the impact of Bill Nicholson, we need to start with his roots at Tottenham Hotspur. Nicholson was a one-club man. He joined Spurs as a player in 1936 at the age of 17, and after a playing career that included winning the First Division title in 1951, he transitioned into coaching at the club. By the time he was appointed as manager in 1958, he had already spent over 2 decades at White Hart Lane, deeply ingrained in the club's culture and history. Nicholson took over as manager on October the 11th, 1958, and he wasted no time making an impression. In his very first match in charge, Spurs hammered Everton 10-4, a result that signalled the dawn of a new era. Nicholson's Tottenham would go on to play a brand of football that was both thrilling and effective, characterised by technical skill, attacking flair, and an unyielding commitment to winning. But Nicholson wasn't just about style. He was a stickler for discipline and hard work. He believed in building a team that could outplay any opponent, but also one that was mentally and physically tougher. This philosophy would be the bedrock of his success. The 1960-61 season was the pinnacle of Nicholson's career and remains one of the greatest seasons in English football history. Tottenham Hotspur, under Nicholson's guidance, became the first team in the 20th century to win the League and FA Cup double. This was a feat that hadn't been accomplished since Aston Villa in 1897, and it placed Nicholson's Spurs in the pantheon of football greatness. The league campaign was nothing short of extraordinary. Tottenham played with the fluidity and confidence that left opponents in their wake. They won 31 of their 42 league matches, finishing with 66 points, 8 points clear of second place Sheffield Wednesday. Nicholson's side was led by iconic players like Danny Blanchflower, the captain and midfield maestro, and Dave Mackay, the indomitable Scottish midfielder. The team also featured goal-scoring legends like Bobby Smith and Cliff Jones, who terrorised defences week in, week out. In the FA Cup, Spurs continued their dominance, culminating in a 2-0 victory over Leicester City in the final. The double-winning season wasn't just a triumph, it was a statement of Nicholson's managerial genius and his ability to craft a team that could dominate on multiple fronts. Bill Nicholson wasn't satisfied with just one great season. He had bigger ambitions for Tottenham Hotspur. The following year, in 1962, Nicholson led Spurs to their second consecutive FA Cup triumph, defeating Burnley 3-1 in the final. The victory marked Tottenham as the first club in the 20th century to retain the FA Cup after winning the double. But Nicholson wasn't done yet. In 1963, Spurs made history again by becoming the first British club to win a European trophy. They lifted the European Cup Winners' Cup after a resounding 5-1 victory over Atletico Madrid in Rotterdam. This triumph on the European stage solidified Tottenham's status as a continental force and was a testament to Nicholson's ability to adapt and excel in different competitions. The 1960s were a period of sustained success for Tottenham under Nicholson. In addition to the domestic and European trophies, Spurs finished runners-up in the league in 1963 and reached the semi-finals of the European Cup in 1962, where they narrowly lost to Benfica. Nicholson continued to evolve his squad, bringing in new talents like Jimmy Greaves, who had become Tottenham's all-time leading goalscorer. Nicholson's tactical acumen, combined with his ability to motivate and manage top-class players, kept Tottenham at the top of English football throughout the decade. He was not just a manager, he was a visionary who understood the game at a deep level, always looking for ways to innovate and improve. As the 1970s approached, Nicholson continued to guide Tottenham through a period of transition. Despite some challenging seasons, he managed to steer the club to more silverware. Spurs won the League Cup in 1971 and 1973, and in 1972 they claimed the inaugural UEFA Cup, defeating Wolverhampton Wanderers in an all-English final. This made Tottenham the first British team to win 2 different European trophies, a remarkable achievement that added to Nicholson's legacy. However, by the 1970s, the football landscape was changing, and Tottenham faced new challenges both on and off the pitch. The club struggled with consistency, and despite Nicholson's best efforts, they could not recapture the heights of the early 1960s. In September 1974, after 16 years at the helm, Nicholson made the difficult decision to step down as manager. He was exhausted, having given everything to the club. His resignation marked the end of an era, but his influence on Tottenham Hotspur was indelible. Over his tenure, Nicholson had won 8 major trophies and established Tottenham as one of the most respected clubs in Europe. After retiring from management, Nicholson remained connected to Spurs, working in various capacities behind the scenes. He was a mentor, a father figure, and an enduring symbol of the club's values. The respect and admiration he commanded from players, staff, and fans alike were immense. Bill Nicholson passed away in 2004, but his legacy lives on. White Hart Lane, the stadium that bore witness to so many of his triumphs, had an entrance named in his honour, the Bill Nicholson Way. And though the club has moved to a new stadium, the spirit of Nicholson's era continues to inspire Tottenham Hotspur. Nicholson's philosophy of "it's no use just winning, we've got to win well" still resonates with Spurs fans. His commitment to attacking football, his insistence on hard work and discipline, and his love for the club are all parts of the DNA that Tottenham strives to uphold today. The 1970s began with Tottenham Hotspur still basking in the glow of Bill Nicholson's golden era. Under Nicholson's leadership, Spurs had won the league and FA Cup double in 1961, added another FA Cup in 1962, and became the first British team to win a European trophy with their Cup Winners' Cup triumph in 1963. The early 70s saw the continuation of this success, but it was also a period that would mark the beginning of the end for Nicholson's time at the helm. In 1971, Tottenham added another League Cup to their trophy cabinet, defeating Aston Villa 2-0 in the final. This victory was followed by another League Cup win in 1973, when Spurs edged out Norwich City 1-0. Nicholson also led the team to their second European trophy in 1972, winning the inaugural UEFA Cup by beating Wolverhampton Wanderers 3-2 on aggregate in the All-English final. These achievements confirmed Spurs as a major force in both domestic and European football. However, the club's fortunes began to wane as the decade progressed. The 1973-74 season was particularly difficult, with Spurs finishing in a disappointing 11th place in the league. The strain of keeping the team competitive weighed heavily on Nicholson, and by September 1974, he decided to step down as manager after 16 years in charge. His departure marked the end of an era, and it left a void that Spurs struggled to fill in the years that followed. The post-Nicholson era saw Tottenham Hotspur entering a period of instability. The club went through a series of managerial changes, each struggling to recapture the glory days. Terry Neill took over from Nicholson, but lasted only 2 seasons before moving on to manage Arsenal. His departure paved the way for Keith Birkinshaw, a manager who would eventually restore some pride and success to the club. Birkinshaw's early years were challenging. The 1976-77 season was particularly tough, with Spurs suffering relegation from the First Division for the first time since the 1930s. It was a bitter blow for a club that had been so successful just a few years earlier. However, Birkinshaw remained determined to rebuild the team and bring Tottenham back to the top flight. Spurs bounced back quickly, winning promotion back to the First Division in 1978. But Birkinshaw wasn't just focused on survival. He had bigger plans. In the summer of 1978, he made 2 groundbreaking signings that would change the course of Tottenham's history. Spurs became the first English club to sign 2 World Cup winning players when they brought in Argentinian stars Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa, fresh off their triumph in the 1978 World Cup. These signings injected new life into the team and set the stage for one of Tottenham's most memorable achievements, the 1981 FA Cup victory. Spurs reached the final, where they faced Manchester City in a match that would go down in history. After a 1-1 draw in the first match, the replay at Wembley produced one of the most iconic moments in FA Cup history. Ricky Villa, with a dazzling solo run, weaved through the City defence and scored what would become the winning goal in a 3-2 victory. It was also a moment of pure magic and secured Tottenham's 6th FA Cup title. The early 1980s were a period of resurgence for Tottenham Hotspur. Under Birkinshaw, the club built on their FA Cup success. In 1982, Spurs retained the FA Cup, defeating Queen's Park Rangers in another replayed final. This victory made Spurs one of the few teams to win the FA Cup in consecutive years, and it reinforced their status as a team that thrived on the big stage. But it wasn't just in domestic competitions where Tottenham excelled. In 1984, Spurs added another European trophy to their collection by winning the UEFA Cup for the second time in their history. The final was a tense affair against Belgian side Anderlecht. After drawing 2-2 on aggregate over 2 legs, the tie was decided by a penalty shootout at White Hart Lane. Goalkeeper Tony Parks emerged as the hero, saving the decisive penalty to give Spurs their 3rd major European title. The UEFA Cup victory was a fitting end to Birkinshaw's tenure as manager. Shortly after the triumph, he left the club, famously remarking, "There used to be a football club over there," a statement reflecting his frustration with the club's board and the direction they were taking. Birkinshaw's departure marked the end of another successful era for Tottenham, but it also ushered in a period of uncertainty and transition. The late 1980s were a turbulent time for Tottenham Hotspur, both on and off the pitch. Financial difficulties plagued the club, and there were frequent changes in management. The team struggled for consistency, and while there were flashes of brilliance, sustained success proved elusive. In 1986, Spurs appointed David Pleat as manager. Pleat's tenure is perhaps best remembered for the 1986-87 season, where Tottenham played some of their most attractive football in years. Led by the striking prowess of Clive Allen, who scored a remarkable 49 goals in all competitions that season, Spurs mounted a serious challenge for the league title. They ultimately finished 3rd, but the campaign is remembered fondly by fans for the attacking football on display. Spurs also reached the FA Cup final in 1987, but they were defeated 3-2 by Coventry City in a thrilling match. Despite the disappointments, the season was seen as a sign that Tottenham were moving in the right direction. However, the club's financial troubles and internal disagreements continued to undermine their progress. By the end of the decade, Tottenham was in a state of flux. The club was taken over by businessman Irving Scholar, whose ambitious plans for redevelopment and financial restructuring were met with mixed success. The financial pressures culminated in the sale of key players like Glenn Hoddle, a Tottenham legend who had been the creative heartbeat of the team throughout the 1980s. As the 1980s came to a close, Tottenham Hotspur was a club at a crossroads. The successes of the early part of the decade under Keith Birkinshaw had given way to a period of uncertainty and instability. Yet despite the challenges, the club's spirit remained unbroken. The 1970s and 1980s were a time of dramatic ups and downs for Spurs, but they also set the stage for the future. The legacy of this era is still felt today. The commitment to attacking football, the flair of players like Ozzy Ardiles, Ricky Villa and Glenn Hoddle, and the passionate support of the fans all contributed to the enduring identity of Tottenham Hotspur. The challenges faced during these decades also forged a resilience in the club, a determination to rise again and reclaim their place among England's elite. When the Premier League was established in 1992, Tottenham Hotspur was already a well-known and established name in English football. However, the early years in the new league proved to be a period of inconsistency and transition for the club. Under manager Terry Venables, Spurs entered the Premier League era with high hopes, but the early 1990s were marked by financial troubles and boardroom instability. Alan Sugar, who had taken over the club in 1991, clashed with Venables, leading to Venables' departure in 1993. Spurs struggled to maintain consistent league form during this period, finishing in mid-table positions. One bright spot was the emergence of talented players like Teddy Sheringham, who won the Premier League's first Golden Boot in the 1992-93 season with 22 goals. In 1994, Spurs were dealt a significant blow when they were docked 12 points and banned from the FA Cup due to financial irregularities under previous management. However, the penalties were later reduced, allowing the club to maintain its top-flight status. The arrival of Gerry Francis as manager in 1994 brought some stability, and the team enjoyed a few positive seasons, finishing 7th in 1994-1995 and reaching the FA Cup semi-finals. However, by the late 1990s, Spurs had fallen back into mid-table mediocrity, struggling to challenge for European places or domestic silverware. Turn of the millennium saw Tottenham continue to search for consistency and success. Under George Graham, the club won the 1999 League Cup, their first trophy since 1991. However, Graham's pragmatic style of football was unpopular with fans, and he was eventually replaced by Glenn Hoddle in 2001, a club legend from his playing days. Hoddle brought hope and excitement back to White Hart Lane, but despite reaching the League Cup final in 2002, his tenure was marked by inconsistency and he was dismissed in 2003. In 2004, Martin Jol took over as head coach, and his tenure marked a significant upturn in the club's fortunes. Jol guided Spurs to consecutive fifth-place finishes in the Premier League in 2005-6 and 2006-7, narrowly missing out on Champions League qualification. Under Jol, players like Robbie Keane, Jermaine Defoe and Dimitar Berbatov became key figures, and the team began to play with more attacking flair. However, after a poor start to the 2007-8 season, Jol was replaced by Juan de Ramos. The Spaniard quickly delivered silverware, winning the League Cup in 2008 with a 2-1 victory over Chelsea. Despite this success, Ramos' tenure was short-lived due to poor league form, and he was replaced by Harry Redknapp in October 2008. Redknapp's arrival marked a turning point for Spurs. He guided the club out of relegation trouble in his first season and led them to a fourth-place finish in 2009-10, securing Tottenham's first ever qualification for the UEFA Champions League. In the 2010-11 season, Spurs made a memorable run to the Champions League quarter-finals, defeating European giants like Inter Milan and AC Milan before being knocked out by Real Madrid. Redknapp's tenure revitalised the club, with players like Gareth Bale, Luka Modric and Rafael van der Vaart playing starring roles. However, after narrowly missing out on Champions League qualification in 2012, Redknapp was sacked and Andre Villas-Boas was appointed as his successor. After brief and ultimately unsuccessful tenures by Villas-Boas and Tim Sherwood, Tottenham appointed Mauricio Pochettino as head coach in 2014. Pochettino, a former Southampton manager, was tasked with building a young, dynamic team that could challenge the established powers of English football. Under Pochettino, Spurs developed into one of the Premier League's most exciting teams, known for their high-pressing style, solid defence and reliance on young talent. The likes of Harry Kane, Dele Alli, Christian Eriksen and Sung Hong-min flourished under this guidance. The 2015-16 season saw Spurs emerge as genuine title contenders, finishing third behind eventual champions Leicester City and fierce rivals Arsenal in a thrilling campaign. The following season they finished second, their highest league finish since 1963, and remained unbeaten at home in their final season at White Hart Lane before moving temporarily to Wembley Stadium. One of Pochettino's crowning achievements came in the 2018-19 season when he led Spurs to their first ever UEFA Champions League final. Tottenham's run to the final included a dramatic comeback against Ajax in the semi-finals, with Lucas Moura scoring a hat-trick, including a last-second goal that secured their place in the final. However, Spurs were defeated 2-0 by Liverpool in the final, a heartbreaking end to an incredible journey. Despite his success, Pochettino was dismissed in November 2019 after a poor start to the 2019-20 season, marking the end of a memorable and transformative era for the club. Following Pochettino's departure, Tottenham appointed his experienced Jose Mourinho as head coach. Mourinho, serial winner with clubs like Chelsea, Inter Milan and Real Madrid, was brought in to end Spurs' trophy drought. While his tenure began with promise, including reaching the League Cup final in 2021, where they were defeated by Manchester City, Spurs' performances were inconsistent and they struggled to challenge for the top four. Mourinho was dismissed in April 2021, just days before the League Cup final, and was replaced by interim manager Ryan Mason for the remainder of the season. In the summer of 2021, Spurs appointed Nuno Espirito Santo as head coach. However, Nuno's tenure was brief and largely unsuccessful, with the team failing to find form. He was dismissed in November 2021 after just 17 matches in charge. In November 2021, Spurs made a bold move by appointing Antonio Conte as head coach. Conte, a Premier League winner with Chelsea and a proven tactician, brought renewed hope to Spurs fans. Under Conte, Spurs saw an immediate improvement in results and secured a top four finish in the 2021-22 season, earning a return to the Champions League. Conte's demanding style and tactical acumen initially seemed to be the right fit for Spurs. The 2022-23 season began with high expectations, but despite a strong start, the team's form became erratic, leading to frustrations between Conte and the club's hierarchy. In March 2023, Conte left the club by mutual consent, with Christian Stellini and later Ryan Mason stepping in as interim managers for the remainder of the season. In the summer of 2023, Tottenham Hotspur made a historic appointment by bringing in Ange Postecoglou as head coach. Postecoglou, an Australian coach known for his attacking philosophy and success with Celtic in Scotland, was the first Australian to manage a Premier League club. Postecoglou quickly won over the Spurs faithful with his positive style of play and emphasis on youth. The 2023-24 season saw Tottenham play some of their most attractive football in years, with the likes of James Maddison, Yves Bissouma and Pedro Porro becoming key figures under his guidance. Despite the departure of star striker Harry Kane to Bayern Munich, Spurs remain competitive, challenging for a top four finish and a return to European football. As of the 2024-25 season, Tottenham Hotspur continues to build under Postecoglou's leadership. The club's focus on attacking football, youth development and a strong team ethos has brought renewed optimism to North London. With a modern stadium in place and a talented squad, Spurs aim to cement their place among the Premier League elite and continue their quest for silverware. From the early days of the Premier League to the present day, Tottenham Hotspur's journey has been one of highs and lows, moments of brilliance and periods of struggle. The club has seen legendary players and managers come and go, each leaving their mark on Spurs' rich history. As the 2024-25 season unfolds, Tottenham Hotspur look forward with ambition and hope, striving to add new chapters to their storied legacy. Whether through domestic triumphs or European adventures, Spurs remain one of English football's most beloved and respected clubs, always aiming to live up to their famous motto, "To dare is to do." And that's a wrap for today's episode. Thanks for joining me on this History Edition journey. Tune in next week on Tuesday for the next episode. Until then, keep competing, guys. Yours, Georgie Boy.
Thanks for listening to an Echoes Hue audio productions project. Smooth, sweet sounds. Don't forget to subscribe to Echoes Hue Audio Productions by following us on social media for more updates and exclusive content. And if you enjoy the show, then please give us a like and write us a review. The Sporting Field of Play History Edition is written and presented by George Soper. The podcast is directed and produced by J.S. Mensah. Our theme music is by Vitaly Vakulenko.